Hello everybody, I'm Sherry from Shaza Blue Crochet. Today I'm going to be teaching you how to make this blue kimono sweater. It takes 2 whirls and a 3mm hook. Let's get started. Today I'll be showing you how to make the kimono sweater, and I'll be using the Cotton Kings Sultan twirls. Of course, you have the Easy Start thing here, and I'm going to be starting mine from the center. We also need a 3mm crochet hook. Let's see if I can get that to focus. Yes. Some stitch markers, and of course a pair of little scissors. There's 2 ways that you can do this. You can make a slip knot and chain loosely 256 stitches, like so. Once you get to the end, what you're going to want to do is to turn and count your 3rd chain from your hook, go into the back bump, pull up a loop, go through 2, go through 2. Now what this means is that this first chain 3 here is going to be your first double crochet, and this right here will be your second double crochet, and you're going to continue on down your chain until you have 253 stitches in total. The other way to do it is to do a foundation double crochet, which is a little bit more advanced technique, but it does make it so that your starting chain is not going to be as tight and will be as stretchy as the rest of your project. What you need to do for that is to chain 2, it's 1, 2, yarn over, and you're going to go through the first bump there from the first chain. So make sure that you get that little bump there. Oops. Having a little bit difficulty because this is 2/8 thread. But eventually I will get into that. Yes, there we go. Then you're going to yarn over and you're going to pull through the loop. Now, if you hold here right onto this first loop, you can yarn over and pull through the first loop. That makes the chain for the bottom, and then you're going to complete the stitch, the double crochet. So you go through 2, very splitty yarn, and you go through 2, and then you yarn over. You're going to go through the top of your chain here. You're going to have a little V stitch here. This probably isn't the best to demonstrate it with, but go through that. You pull up a loop, go through that 1 loop, yarn over, go through 2, go through 2, completing the double crochet. I'll demonstrate that one more time. Yarn over, you're going to go through the 2 top loops here, yarn over and pull that through. Oops, lost it. Go through the 2 top loops here, yarn over, pull through the loop, yarn over, pull through the 1, yarn over, pull through 2, and pull through 2 to complete the stitch. Again, yarn over, go through the top 2 loops, see, right there, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through one loop to make the chain part, yarn over through two, yarn over through two to complete the double crochet. Now, it does make it easier if you know where you started. That's your starting bottom loop, and it makes it easier if you know where you started on the top. So there's your top. I always put stitch markers in those two places because it makes it easier to identify your stitches, and identifying your stitches is half the battle in crochet. Now you need to continue making either your foundation chain or your chains and your double crochets for your first row. And when you have 253 stitches of the double crochet, I will meet you back here to continue the rest of this. Okay, once you have 253 stitches, you're going to want to put some stitch markers in every 20 stitches or so, just so that you can keep track. And as you can see, I have already done this. It just makes it easier when you have so many stitches to keep track of where you are and how many stitches are in between each stitch marker. So I definitely have all of my 253 stitches that you can see by how many stitch markers that I have, and so I don't need to count as much. I also have put in a stitch marker at the end or the first stitch, and I will be putting one in the last stitch so that I know exactly where I started and where I ended, because where most people go wrong is at the beginning of the stitches, at the beginning of the row, and at the end of the row. Normally people will either drop a stitch or they will add one stitch at that point. So a good tip is just to keep a stitch marker in the first and in the last stitch of every row. Now row 2, after you have 253 double crochets for the first row, you're going to want to either chain 3, 1, 2, 3, and turn your work, and then this hole right here, that will be this chain 3 is going to be your first double crochet, so you don't want to put anything in the first hole right there. Or instead of doing that, let's take out the chain 3. You can, and this is another advanced technique, you can pull up enough yarn so that it looks about the same size as your other double crochet, and then twist it around once, go through the first hole, pull up your yarn, yarn over, go through 2, you have 2 loops left on your hook, yarn over and go through those last 2, and then of course put your stitch marker in your first stitch so that you can easily identify it when you come back to this side. And then all you have to do is continue on with where you were and do another whole row of double crochet, and that's pretty much it for this row. You just keep doing double crochet all the way across, 253 stitches, and again I will meet you on the other side. Oh, a word about these stitch markers. When you come to them, and I'm coming up on one right now, And this is my 13 stitches. I just work into that stitch. I take the stitch marker out and I move it up to the next stitch, and I don't need to do so much counting with that there. Then I know that I have already done 13 stitches and I'm working on a set of 20 right now. But that's it. It's pretty simple, and I will see you after you have done 253 double crochet all the way across. We're back, and I figured that I would show you this stitch, this chainless double crochet one more time to begin your row. What you do is you pull up a loop that is about the same size as your double crochet normally would be. Put your finger on the hook holding the thread and twist your hook around that yarn. You go through the hole, you pick up a loop, pull it through, you yarn over, pull through 2 loops, you yarn over and pull through 2 loops, just like a regular crochet, and put a stitch marker in there. As you can see, it made a little V. And then you can continue with your pattern, which is chain 1 and a double crochet, chain 1, skip this stitch and a double crochet, chain 1, skip this stitch, double crochet in the next, chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet, and you're going to continue this all the way across, and you will have 127 double crochets and 126 chain 1 spaces. Now the stitch markers, they should always fall in a chain space where you skip. This is the stitch you skip, and there's the chain which falls over the skip stitch, and at that point you can move the stitch marker up, and then this is the skip stitch, and this is where you double crochet, and you just keep continuing like this all the way across. And your tension is going to be a little bit different on this one, and it will kind of wobble a bit, and it'll look a little less, it'll look a little tighter than the rest of your project, and so it will curl up a little bit. Just a little bit, mind you. That will correct itself when you get further into the project. Believe me, it'll straighten out. Cotton is wonderful at draping, and the whole project is made with this 100% cotton twirls, so it should have a nice drape and correct itself when we're finished. Okay, so continue doing the chain 1, skip a stitch, and double crochet in the next all the way across, and I will meet you at the end. Alright, I'm almost to the end here, and I wanted to show you what it would look like when you got to the end. We're going to chain 1, skip a stitch, double crochet, chain 1, skip a stitch, there's one more stitch there, one stitch there. You can tell because that's the V, and that's what it looks like when you get to one of those chainless double crochets. You basically just double crochet into that like you would any other stitch, and that completes your row 3. When you turn, you can again pull up enough that it's about the same size as a double crochet. Hang on to your hook, twist it around, go through the hole, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, and put your stitch marker back in so that you have that little V again. And that's where you're going to end your row. This row again is just double crochet all the way across. I do 1 in the double crochet and 1 in the chain space. In the double crochet and 1 in the chain space. And I'm going to continue like this all the way across. And you should have at the end of this 253 stitches again. I'll show you what to do when you get to the stitch markers, of course. So you're coming up to this one, which is where a stitch marker is in the chain space. So you put your double crochet in there, unhook your stitch marker, and just slip it back into that one again, and then continue on. You're going to do double crochet all the way to the end because this is just a repeat of row 1, and that's basically what you're going to be doing for the rest of the pattern. Is you're going to be repeating rows 1, 2, and 3, and when you finish this, you're going to finish it on row 1, not row 3, but row 1. You're going to do the pattern, I believe it is 14 times. Alright, I just wanted to make a quick correction here. You're supposed to continue with this, repeating rows 1 through 3 in a total of 15 times. So you've got the first 1 through 3, and then you repeat that 14 times and add another row 1 at the end. So in total you're going to have 43 rows. I just wanted to make that correction because I had it wrong in my notes and I needed to correct that before we could go on. I have all 43 rows done, and I have left a little bit of yarn here so that we can sew up the back, and this lighter color as opposed to the darker color, these are going to be my sleeve size, and this is going to be the middle of my back side. So what you need to do now is make another panel that is exactly like this, but before you do, I need you to pull out a little bit of the middle so that when you go to sew up the sleeve side, you have a little bit of yarn that is in the same color, and you don't have like a weird mix of color sewing up your side. So this will help keep it matched, and then you don't have this on this side of the sweater sewing it up. But basically that's what you need to do, is you need to pull out, like I'm thinking about 5 yards or so, not very much, from the middle, and then continue with the other side. Okay, this is the completed panel for one side, and this is the completed panel for the other side. We need to lay them side by side so that we can sew up the middle part. And what you're going to do is just make sure that you have a stitch marker at 100 stitches. So go ahead and do that now. Make sure that it's at 100 stitches on both sides of the panel. So make sure that you do that for both sides of the panel. I have it on one side and I'm going to do it on the other side now. I'll be right back. Okay, you can see here that I have put in my 2 stitch markers. There's one on this side and one on this side. And I am going to start at the bottom here. With my extra yarn. I started with a 3mm hook, so I'm going to want to continue with a 3.25 hook. Let me see if I can get that in focus. Yeah, right there. I'm going to use this hook to continue. It's just one hook size up, and this is an easier way to join these 2 sides. Basically, what you're going to want to do is you're going to take these 2 sides here and you're going to go through the first stitch on both sides and pull up a loop. Then you're going to chain 1 after you have your first loop pulled up. But basically you're going to attach the 2 together here. You're going to chain 1, skip 1 stitch, and you're going to single crochet in the next. Chain 1, skip the next, and single crochet in the next 2. You see how I'm skipping 1 here and 1 here. One here, and it's very small, I know. You see that V right there, and this V right here. We're going to skip that one and we're going to single crochet in the next. And we're going to keep doing this all the way up to the top of where the stitch markers meet. We're going to single crochet, chain 1, go through both loops, skipping 1 stitch, single crochet, chain 1, single crochet, chain 1, single crochet, chain 1. Now this is just how I do my join because it's the easiest for me. However, there is also the mattress stitch that you can use, but that's using primarily a needle, and I try and use the needle as little as possible because that's not my favorite part of crocheting. But this works just as well as the other. You do see a little bit of a gap on the back, but it doesn't look that bad actually. I will show you when I finish how this looks. But you just keep continuing this all the way up, and I will meet you there. Make a little jump in the video. I've just finished the seam on the back, and I wanted to show you what it looked like from the other side. Barely noticeable at all. You can see the seam is right here. Pick it up and show you. That is my seam. It is hardly noticeable at all. it's nice and evenly stitched. And you still have on either side the holes. And we are going to take these panels and we are going to fold them in half like this, so that they are in half. Let me just see if I can get this straightened up, and then I will show you what I'm doing, because it's really hard to see on this camera. But here is my side, and I have it doubled. I've just taken the whole thing and I have moved it over, folded it over onto itself. So basically, that's all you need to do. Now, what I like to do, and what I have done on the robe, is I have taken a few stitches from the side and I've said, okay, I'm not going to put any stitches there so that I can have a little flap opening. That's personal preference. You do not have to do that if you do not want to. So if you want to do that, you can count up however many stitches you want that first side slit to be. Okay, I folded everything in so that I can fit it all into the screen here, but I have a slit here, and that is at approximately 25 stitches. And then I have the armholes, which are here. It's just folded in on itself, no big deal. Which the stitch marker is at 80. And I have done this on both sides. So there's the stitch markers at 25 and the stitch markers at 80. You want to make sure that you do stitch markers on both sides so that you can keep track of where you are, that you don't go before these or after these when you're sewing up or stitching up the sides. Again, I'm just going to use a little bit of my extra yarn and my 3.25 hook. One more thing that you've got to make sure of before you start stitching up your sweater on those lines there is to make sure that you have your garment inside out. You want your right sides together when you're sewing this up, so that when you sew this seam up here, it matches with your back seam, that they are the seams on the inside of the sweater and not on the outside. I have done it before so many times where I have had the outside seam and then done the inside seam over here. So make sure that you have your right sides together, and then go ahead and start seaming up your sweater with your 3.25 hook again, and just go all the way along, doing one single crochet, chain one, skip a stitch, one single crochet, chain one, skip a stitch, one single crochet. And that is the easiest and neatest join that I have found. You can take out your stitch markers. I'm going to be weaving in our ends, but you don't need these stitch markers anymore. Can all be put back into our handy dandy little stitch marker bin here. Turn the sweater right side out. This is the back with the V for the neck. my back seam, and my side seams right here, a little thicker. I've got a little bit of a split here, just like in the robe that I made. And the armholes, which are complete now. And in a moment, I will show you how to make the belt and how to thread that through. So I hope that you have saved the excess yarn from the lighter thread, because that is what we are going to be using to make the belt. Okay, I've zoomed in a little bit here so that I could show you that I've changed again to a 3.75 millimeter hook, and I am going to make the belt by simply doubling up the thread, which is just take a whole bunch of it and pull it to one side, and you have a whole bunch of it, and that's pulled over to the other side. All you have to do is make sure that you have a loop of it over your crochet hook, and begin with one chain and just keep going. When you are done with your chain, all you have to do is cut it off and pull through completely. Give it a little tug, and that is your belt right there. It's just your basic chain. Now, another thing that you could do if you wanted to, instead of making this long chain, is to use an addy egg, which is this machine right here. This makes an I-cord, and the only reason why I didn't use it for this is because this does not work well with the addy egg. It tends to only catch a few little strings, and the rest it leaves. So I just made mine with the crochet, which was fine. That's what I did with my previous one as well, and it turns out beautiful. It does not matter to me. But if you have one of these and you have used a different yarn, then you could certainly use one of the addy eggs to make your I-cord, or whatever it is that you want to do. Now, a word about weaving this in. I will pan the camera out a little bit and show you how to weave this in, and then I will introduce you to Betty Bust. And I've zoomed out a little bit so that I can show you exactly what to do with this belt. I've also given it a try on Betty Bust and make sure that I have the belt at the right area in the waist. And basically all we're going to do is we're going to weave this end of your belt through, back and forth through these holes that are in the sweater, and you want to kind of try and keep them at about the same height in the sweater. And you're just going to go through a few of these holes on one side, and then you're going to do the same on the other side. So you just go through, pull it down, pull it back up, pull it down, and pull it back up, all at about the same level, until you have, I don't know, it depends on your waist, how small your waist is and how tight that you want it, but you just keep weaving these in back and forth until you think that looks right, that looks about my waist size. Okay, so I've done a couple more on that side. I'll do a couple more on this side. Just get underneath of here, make sure that it's kind of staying at the same level. Doesn't have to be perfect. Now, and then you need to get the front part, and you're going to have to try and make sure that it is about the same level as your other holes and come in about where you came out. So you're going to go through there, and this is your front side now, and you're going to go through there and back up and back down and back up. So this side is done. I completed, and you can see now why you really wanted to use the lighter thread for your belt. It's because the middle portion is the lighter portion. If you don't have a color changing yarn like I do, then this is going to be a little bit different for you, but you know, just try and match colors as much as you can. I will put this on Betty Bust and let you have a look and see what you think of the finished product. Alright, I just wanted to introduce you to Betty Bust. She is my clothing model, and she is wearing the Kimono Robe, which is what this pattern was based on. I used 4 whorls for this one, whereas the sweater I only used 2. That is the sweater version of the kimono sweater. I only used 2 whorls for that, 1 on each side. If you liked today's tutorial, please give me a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell so that you don't miss any notifications for new things that I upload. Thank you for watching.